Director, who's Kevin Rojek?
I'm sorry, sir, could you say?
Kevin Rojek, R-O-J-E-K?
I'm sorry, sir, I don't recognize the name.
Well, he's the special agent in charge at the FBI Pittsburgh office looking into the assassination attempt on President Trump. Took place in Butler, Pennsylvania. My understanding is HSI had a number of agents at Butler at that particular day. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir, that's correct. We had 16 agents, special agents assigned to the Butler Farm
You had
rally.
16 of your people there.
16, 1-6.
Yeah. Do you know how many Secret Service agents were there that day?
No, sir, I don't.
But you had 16 of your agents supplementing and helping with the security of President Trump on July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania.
We provided support to Secret Service as collateral law enforcement support. We were not in a position where we were directly protecting the principal. We would never, as HSI agents, be assigned to that position.
But you were helping out that day.
Yes, sir.
And the guy who's doing the investigation, looking into what took place, where President Trump was hit by a bullet from the assassin, another American was killed, 2 other Americans were injured. The guy who was in charge of that investigation has not talked to you, even though 16 of your agents were there that day?
No, sir.
You don't even know Kevin Rojek, never heard of him?
I haven't. I can tell you that Monday, after the assassination attempt in West Palm Beach, I reached out to Acting Deputy Director Vince Tutoni, who was in West Palm or the vicinity at the time, had gone down. I did speak to him on Monday to further.
You reached out?
I reached out to him, sir.
Do you know who Jeffrey Veltri is?
No, sir.
Okay, he's the guy in Miami who works for the FBI who's overseeing what took place Sunday, the second assassination attempt on President Trump. You have not talked to him?
No, sir.
But you have actively reached out. And who's the individual you spoke to in Miami? He works for HSI?
No, Vince Tutoni. He's the Acting Deputy Director for Secret Service.
For Secret Service, okay.
I will say, if I may, certainly with an incident like this, they are certainly very busy. I did not take any offense that they did not reach out to me.
Even though it's been 2 months? I mean, since the guy in Butler, that's 2 months ago, and the guy running the investigation has not reached out to the individual in charge of the 16 agents who were there who were supposed to be helping supplement the protection of the president, or former president?
It's something, our support to Secret Service is something ongoing that we do all the time. It's baked into our mission. We've done this historically.
Do you have agents in Miami on Sunday working on President Trump's detail or helping supplement his Secret Service detail?
Yes, sir. We had 4.
You had 4?
We had 4. 2 were on shift and 2 were on shift, not in the immediate vicinity. 2 were not on shift at the time of the
So
incident.
you had agents at both of the assassination attempts on the former president, and the individuals at the FBI conducting the investigations have not talked to you. In one case, that's been over 2 months ago.
Correct.
That's your testimony today. Is that accurate?
Correct.
I find that troubling. I find that troubling. Let's switch here for a second. What type of training do your agents receive before they, well, let me ask this. How long has HSI been supplementing the Secret Service and giving agents to help the Secret Service in their duties?
Sir, thank you for that question. Certainly back to our time when we were U.S. Customs Service agents with Secret Service under the Department of Treasury. I don't have the exact date, but this is historically something that we have supported Secret Service. I personally—
Fairly common, you're
Yes.
saying. Okay, and is it common to have like that many agents at an event with the former president? Like, was that unusual, or is 16 kind of normal, or do you sometimes have more, sometimes, what's kind of normal?
It varies based on the need and the situation.
Is it ongoing? Does President Trump always have some HSI people with him now when he's traveling, or even it looks like when he's at his residence in Florida?
We provide support to Secret Service, and then they assign our personnel as needed.
Okay, okay. Madam Chair, I find it kind of astonishing that the people doing the investigation haven't talked to the individual who's in charge of so many of these agents who've been supplementing President Trump's security detail. Maybe that's why it's good that in the case of what happened on Sunday, Governor DeSantis is actually doing his own investigation. Maybe that'll be done a little bit better. With that, I yield back to the chairman of the committee.
I now recognize Ms. Gunasekara.
Gunasekara, thank you.
Say that one more time. It's gonna.
It's all right, Gunasekara.
That's what I meant.
That's what y'all said.
Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Chairman Comer, thank you for being here today. Ranking Member Raskin, it really is an honor to be with all of y'all and fellow members of the committee. I have a prepared opening statement that I'll get into in just a second, but Ranking Member Raskin, you reiterated and have created a boogeyman that just isn't there. I did author the EPA chapter on Project 2025, but in the course of that, I did not work with President Trump, with any of the people who work for him directly or his campaign. And it is very misleading to suggest that there's any coordination there, because I can personally tell you it did not happen. And I am not vying for a position in the next administration. I've actually left DC and I've moved to a small town in Mississippi where I interact every day with people who live outside this bubble of gaslighting and misleading, and they actually are dealing with the consequences caused by policy decisions of this administration that isn't defined by progress, but defined by creating unnecessary hardship. I understand why it's hard to think about the political realm prior to President Trump, but the Heritage Foundation has been very involved in pushing forward conservative policies for quite a while. And the Mandate for Leadership, the latest iteration, it's the 9th edition. This is a project that has been put out every few years since 1981. So it's been around for quite some time, and again, is more committed to representing the position of the broader conservative movement than any one candidate or person. And I understand why there is the creation of this boogeyman, because your leading candidate is one running away from policy actions she has taken that make Americans' lives much more difficult. In fact, Vice President Kamala Harris was recently asked on national television the following question: when it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago? She said a lot of words, but she did not answer the question, because the reality is most Americans are not better off. Most Americans are struggling to deal with expensive gas, expensive electricity, and high-cost goods and groceries that have created financial burdens that Americans have had to deal with throughout the Biden-Harris administration. Their day one energy policies are a key driver behind Americans' increasing financial distress. From President Biden's promise to end all fossil fuels, alongside Vice President Kamala Harris's commitment to ban fracking, Americans have suffered under their radical agenda. From the energy perspective, this has included locking up development of resources and demonizing industries, mainly coal, oil, and natural gas, that still provide 80% of our daily energy needs. A recent report from the Institute of Energy Research has been tracking these actions, and they've found that since January 2021, President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and congressional Democrats have taken over 250 actions that make it harder to produce energy in America. This has included stopping construction of the Keystone XL pipeline that immediately cut 11,000 domestic jobs, including thousands of union jobs, issuing a moratorium on new oil and gas permits on federal lands, greenlighting Putin's Nord Stream 2 pipeline while shuttering the development of U.S. pipelines along the East Coast, rejoining the disastrous Paris Climate Agreement that is squeezing out U.S. jobs and increasing the regulatory burden on American companies, launching a war on household appliances that are now 34% more expensive than 15 years ago, blocking the Twin Metals mine, shuttering U.S. steelworker jobs in Minnesota and cutting off access to critical minerals that we need more and more of. And instead, this administration is making us more and more dependent on China. Slowing permits for LNG facilities from an average of 7 weeks to 11 months, then completely halting permits for new LNG facilities altogether. Mandating that Americans drive electric vehicles despite growing market resistance, infrastructure shortfalls, and a preference for more affordable and reliable gas-powered vehicles. Americans are dealing with the consequences of these actions every time they put gas in their car, pay their electricity bills, or go to the grocery store. Now, This isn't necessary for purposes of protecting the environment or saving future generations from climate change. I know this because during the Trump administration, we were able to grow the economy, create jobs, reduce emissions, and address legacy environmental issues. The reality is that America needs more energy, and with the right policies in place and a pragmatic mindset from our leaders, we can build a strong economy that delivers lower cost for consumers, protects the environment, and reverses the negative financial consequences of the past 3.5 years. Again, thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
My colleagues across the aisle said that those that cannot pronounce Kamala's name correctly are elementary-aged children. I would like to enter into the record an article by Newsweek saying Bill Clinton pronounces Kamala Harris' name wrong during DNC speech. Bill Clinton, along with Al Sharpton, rapper Lil Jon, let's not forget that Joe Biden can't say her name right, neither can Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, and this morning on Morning Joe, Joan Baez called her a camel. So I don't want to hear it. It's fake outrage. I would like to also enter into the record a screenshot of a text message I received from the esteemed professor from Vanderbilt, Michael Eric Dyson, after my CNN interview, begged me for photos. In this text, he says, after calling me racist on CNN, shh, don't tell anybody, we look good together, and sent me a kissy emoji.
Without
then
objection.
the guy
Order.
says I'm gorgeous in all these photos. I don't think he's that bent out of shape on how anyone pronounces Kamala. And if we're going to have that standard, you got to hold it to both sides, not just one or the other. On to the issue at hand. I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for our witnesses being here today. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have presided over the worst presidential administration in American history. Biden and Kamala Harris inherited a country with a strong economy and next to zero inflation. Under the Biden-Harris administration, inflation skyrocketed, wages stagnated, and the American families are struggling to make ends meet, as we're all well aware of today. Biden and Kamala inherited a world at peace and turned it into a world at war. Our allies are under attack, our adversaries emboldened, and America embarrassed on the world stage. In fact, even being forced to evacuate 7 embassies during this administration. Biden and Kamala inherited a country with the most secure border in our nation's history. They flung our borders wide open to the largest invasion of illegal aliens our country has ever seen. The illegal aliens Biden and Kamala have led into our country have gone on to rape and murder American citizens, including our women and girls, including 158 Democrats who voted against deporting illegals who are here, murdering, raping, and who are also pedophiles, harming our women and girls. Biden and Kamala can't even tell us the difference between a woman and a mentally ill man in a dress. Of all Joe and Kamala's many failings, I'd like to focus my 5 minutes today on immigration. I'm down to about 2, so we'll be quick. During her failed 2020 presidential campaign, well before her coup against Joe Biden, Kamala Harris completed an ACLU candidate questionnaire outlining her policy positions. I'd like to examine a few of her responses and how they've informed her work as border czar, since she says her values have not changed. Mr. Chairman, I would like to enter into the record this questionnaire, ACLU Rights for All Candidate Questionnaire 2019, Kamala Harris.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. One of the strangest responses from Kamala in the questionnaire was when she indicated she supported providing taxpayer-funded so-called gender-affirming care for illegal aliens in immigration detention, which we all know is cutting off their private parts, taxpayer-funded cutting off of their private parts. So, Mr. Krikorian, is this occurring under this administration, and what are the serious safety consequences it may pose?
Well, I mean, the safety consequences of the procedures themselves I'm not qualified to talk about, but clearly it serves as yet one more incentive for people to illegally immigrate into the United States. In this case, people seeking a particular kind of medical procedures.
In the questionnaire, Kamala pledges to slash funding for ICE, cut immigration detention by more than 50%, and even express support for ending immigration detention. Have Biden-Harris presidential budget requests reflected Kamala's desire to cut ICE funding and immigration detention?
Detention funding, absolutely. It's decreased significantly, and in fact, it needs to be increased significantly because detention is the one way you're going to be able to deter people who want to come into the United States and be released. If you don't release them, the appeal of trying and spending all of that money is significantly less.
She pledged to end the use of ICE detainers and criticized the cooperation between ICE and state and local law enforcement. How is this going to negatively affect our country?
It would make it extremely difficult to enforce immigration law because ICE is a relatively small agency and doesn't walk around the streets asking people what their green cards are. The main vehicle for finding illegal aliens, if you don't do worksite enforcement, which this administration has essentially stopped, is working with state and local law enforcement. When they arrest people for state and local crimes, their fingerprints go to DHS and they're flagged as somebody that they know to be an illegal immigrant. A detainer is the request ICE sends out to say, hold on to this person for 48 hours at least, up to 48 hours so we can go and get them. If you're not using detainers, it is one of the most pro-criminal policies you could imagine because the only people protected by stopping ICE detainers or not honoring them as sanctuary cities do, the only people protected are criminals. So it is a pro-criminal policy as well as an anti-immigration enforcement in general policy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Welcome to the Oversight Committee, where we focused on waste, fraud, and abuse, not the campaign trail. This hearing is called A Legacy of Incompetence, Consequences of the Biden-Harris Administration's Policy Failures. Policies that do not deliver results for the American people, who are the taxpayers, are complete failures. Spending money and allocating money is not a policy of success. It's the outcome of the money that has been spent based on the policy. So I'd like to talk through this one that I find absolutely shocking, especially given that my district is a rural district in Georgia. This is in 2021. President Biden taps Kamala Harris to lead effort to close digital divide. The White House released their remarks by President Biden, an address to a joint session of Congress. And in the process, it will create thousands and thousands of good-paying jobs. It creates jobs connecting every American with high-speed internet, including 35% of the rural America that still doesn't have it. This is going to help our kids and our businesses succeed in the 21st century economy. And I'm asking the Vice President to lead this effort, if she would. Vice President replied, "Of course." The President said, "Because I know it will get done." Now, fast forward to 2024. Here's the headlines. Why has Joe Biden's $42 billion broadband program not connected one single household? Maybe it's because, this is also in the headlines, that Harris announces plans to help 80% of Africa gain access to the internet, up from 40% now. Talk about a policy failure. Talk about not delivering results to the American people. Spending $42 billion, yet not having one household connected to the internet. Mr. Carr, is that actually true? Not one home got internet?
That's correct. In Georgia alone, there's about 257,000 homes and businesses that lack internet today. So that's potentially millions of people that were supposed to be connected through this program. $42 billion was enough money to actually end the digital divide in this country with competent implementation. Unfortunately, we have not cleared that hurdle. We have stories out right now that describe the implementation as chaotic, dysfunction, delays, no guidance, finger pointing, messy, delayed rollout. That's just not getting the job done.
That's right, Mr. Carr, and many of those homes and businesses are actually in my district, and they're outraged. You know, we're over $35 trillion in debt. Biden-Harris administration has been in charge for nearly 4 years, but not one home and business has gotten internet. It's outrageous. This is so concerning to me. How can the woman Kamala Harris, that is telling the country right now she wants to be president of the United States, actually asked for this job if she has not been able to deliver what the president assigned her to do, which was to take that $42 billion and provide internet to the American people. I find that hard to believe because I own a construction company, and when we get hired to do a job, guess what? We deliver it. Let me ask you a question. Under the Trump administration, in 2020, the FCC awarded Starlink $885 million to serve 642,925 homes and businesses that lacked internet. What happened to that program?
Well, last year, after President Biden went to the White House podium and said that Elon Musk is worth being looked into, the FCC abruptly reversed course and yanked back that award. And now in other programs, the ones that are actually connecting people under this administration, we're spending dollars on the penalties. Senator Cruz recently had a report showing that in some cases we're spending $100,000 per home for broadband, when with that Starlink deal, it was $1,300. I don't think there's any way to explain the FCC's decision other than to go back to Joe Biden giving the green light to agencies to go after them.
So what has happened in the process of $42 billion being allocated for Americans to get internet? Why has that not been able, why can't Kamala Harris deliver those results?
Look, after 1,039 days and no Americans being connected, what they've been doing so far is advancing a wish list of progressive policy goals. They've been pushing for DEI requirements, climate change agenda, preferences for government-run networks, rather than just focusing on getting people connected.
You know, thank you very much, Mr. Carr. That's exactly what the American people are so fed up with, is so-called policies that actually never deliver results for the American people. I yield, Mr. Chairman.